I survived 100 days in Stardew Valley. Please subscribe and enjoy the video. Bright and early on day 1, I woke up to find 15 free parsnip seeds. After quickly clearing out an area, I planted the seeds in 5 neat rows and headed off to meet the townspeople. I talked to a couple of people, then went to Pierre's and bought 8 bean seeds. I also dug up an artifact which I bought to Gunter. At around 7, I headed back to my farm, planted the beans and went to bed. On day 2, I was greeted by some mail. After closer inspection, it was Pierre selling me stuff, so I got to work watering my plants and headed straight off to the town. I was early, so no one was around, and the stores were closed, so I attended to some important business. I was just about to cut all the grass next to the community centre when I found a geode, so I got it opened and got some copper. I then met with Willie, got my rod, fished for a bit, then went to bed. In the morning of day 3, I decided to explore the southern area of the map. I came across a pier and the wizard's house before seeing an opposite shore across the river. I followed the edge of the river until I found a way across, where I found some spring onions. I also found an abandoned house. After that, I decided I would go up to see Robin before heading to bed. I woke up on day 4 bright and early to water my crops before heading into town. Since I had nothing to do with my farm and got to town early, I devised a list of things I wanted to do in these 100 days. Get a barn and coop, upgrade my house, and reach level 120 in the mines. After Pierre's shop opened, I spent all of my money on beans before setting off to meet everyone I had missed. I met everyone in town except the wizard before going to bed. That night, I had a cutscene where a fairy came to my farm, and in the morning of day 5, I headed outside to discover nothing but a crow munching on my crops. But today was a special day, because it was my very first harvest. In total, I managed to scrape together 8 beans and 14 parsnips, which were worth almost 900 gold, which I immediately spent on 10 cauliflower seeds. I talked to some villagers, planted my cauliflower, and went to bed. On day 6, I left my cottage with a mission to increase my bean crop, and to do that, I would need money, which I was a little short of, so I set off straight away to go fishing. I fished for a while up near the cave, then fished for a while down near Willie's. After selling all my fish, I came away with a hefty stack of cash, which I instantly spent on beans and cauliflower at Pierre's. I then wandered home, planted the seeds, and went to bed. On day 7, I decided I would spend the day trying to find new areas on the map I hadn't explored yet. But after watering my crops, all I came across was a weird box without a battery pack in it in the tunnel. After that disappointing find, I wandered into town and realised that it was Mayor Lewis's birthday. I gave him a flower, but he didn't seem too impressed. I spent the rest of the day fishing. In the morning of day 8, I woke up to a letter from the Hat Mouse asking me to give him money in an abandoned house. And I remembered that I had found an abandoned house back in day 3 and went down to check it out. As it turns out, I'm poor, but I wasn't poor for long, because that day was also the day my beans harvested, so I got a ton of gold off them, which I instantly spent on more beans. I used the rest of the day to collect wood for my future coop. On day 9, I realised that I was nearly 10% of the way through the 100 days, and I still hadn't been to the mines, so I woke up bright and early to water my crops and head to the mines. I managed to get quite a lot of copper and quartz, but I needed to upgrade my backpack because I had to leave a bunch of things behind. After I almost exhausted myself, I spent the rest of the day mingling with the villagers and foraging before going to bed. It was officially day 10, the day I could finally adopt my new cat, Nob, but I had bigger things to do, so I gave Nob a quick pat before heading back out to the caves. Once again, I realised that I really needed a bigger backpack, but I did still get some pretty cool stuff. These things included a small glow ring, a small dagger, and a bunch of copper. When I got home, I spent the night smelting some copper into bars, which I would continue the next day. I woke up on day 11 to some mail. The letter was from Robin asking for someone to find her axe that she had lost around Marnie's ranch and the southern area of the map. So I quickly bought some kale off Pierre, planted it, and devoted the day to finding Robin's axe. I looked for most of the in-game day, but I eventually found it lying above the sewer at around 3 PM. I rushed up to Robin's to give it to her, and in return she gave me 250 gold. I then returned home and went to bed. On day 12, I decided that I would give all the artifacts and random items that could be given to Gunter. After donating them all to him, in return he gave me 9 cauliflower seeds, which I took gratefully and planted as soon as I got home. I then used the rest of the day breaking stones on the farm for geodes, stone and coal. Day 15 was the official Stardew Valley egg hunt thing. After watering my plants, I hurried over to the town, talked to some of the townsfolk there and started the hunt, which I won using all my egg finding skills. I was expecting money as a prize, but instead I got a hat, which was underwhelming. After the egg hunt finished, the game teleported me back home and it was suddenly 10 PM, so I gave Nob a pat and went to bed. Day 14 was a very special day, and that was because it was the day my first big harvest came in. After picking my beans and watering my plants, I headed over to Pierre's to sell them. The grand total of my profits from the beans came up to nearly 1 grand, which surprisingly I didn't spend. I didn't spend the money immediately because I was saving for the bag upgrade, which would make caving a whole lot easier. With all my hard-earned cash, I went up to the northern parts of the map to fish before heading to bed. Day 15 was a rainy day, so I decided that I was going to spend the day in the mines. I emptied my inventory, collected some salmon berries for food, and took the elevator down the mines. In the end, I managed to get down to level 20, which gave me a better sword. I also managed to get a ruby and a bunch of copper. After leaving the mines, I gave the Adventurers Guild a visit before heading home to bed. On day 16, after watering my plants, I decided that I would finally check out the community center. So I wandered into town and into the community center, and after a little exploration, I found a little bundle on the floor. When I opened it, all that there was alien characters, and I realized that a person who could probably read these characters was the wizard. So I ran all the way up to his tower, but he didn't let me in, so I took a piss and went home. When day 17 came around, I noticed that I had a letter. The mail was from the wizard, asking if I could come to his tower. Before I left, I harvested quite a large crop, organized my chests, and headed off. When I arrived at the wizard's house, he gave me some drugs, and apparently now I can read alien writing. Then I went home, chopped some trees, and went to bed. Day 18 was a very special day. It was the day I could finally sell all of my cauliflower and beans that I had been saving up. So I quickly grabbed all of my crops and headed over to Pierre's. After selling everything, my grand total of money went up to over 6,000. With my newfound wealth, I quickly bought a bigger backpack, then headed back to my farm to grab all the wood and stone, which I used to purchase my first structure on my farm, a coop. After deciding where it would go, I went home and spent the rest of the day clearing out my farm before going to bed. Day 19 I forgot to record, but I can say that I went to the mines and collected a bunch of stuff in my new backpack. On day 20, I woke up and watched some television, which told me that I would have very good luck today. So I hurried outside, harvested some beans, and headed to the mines. In the end, I managed to get all the way down to level 40, and down there waiting for me was a slingshot, which allows me to do damage from afar. After that exciting discovery, I went home and chopped trees for the rest of the day. When I was going to bed, Nob showed me his Superman skills and teleported to my bed. I achieved nothing on day 21. I started out wanting to get a silo to go with my new coop that had just finished construction, so I grabbed my wood and stone and went to Robin's. When I got there, I realized that I needed 10 clay, which I did not have. So I spent the day hoeing the ground over and over until I got clay, and by the time I had 10, Robin had left her shop. This was not a good day for Dave. So on day 22, I had an exact plan on everything I wanted to do that day. First, I harvested my crops, then sold them to Pierre. Next, I went up to Robin's and bought the silo. Then I went into the mines until around 6, then talked to Clint to complete a side quest. I felt very accomplished when I went to bed that night. In the morning of day 23, I was organising my chests when I realised that I had 19 geodes. So after I harvested some crops, I headed straight to Clint's. The geodes didn't end up getting me very good loot, but I managed to get a couple of items that I could donate to the museum. In return, Gunter gave me some melon seeds, which would become very useful in summer. I decided to spend the rest of the night in the mines. Day 24 was the Stardew Valley flower dance, so after I quickly harvested some beans and cauliflower, I headed down to the forest. When I got there, I asked around, but no one wanted to dance with me, so I kind of just stood on the sidelines and watched them dance. Weird. On day 25, my silo was finally finished its construction, so I excitedly sold some crops, went and bought a pickaxe upgrade from Clint, and headed down to Marnie's. There I bought 4 chickens, Noggin, Gaunt, Cone, and Dupe. I then spent the rest of the day chopping some trees. On day 26, I realized that spring was almost over, and I didn't even have very many forageables, so I decided to spend the day looking for spring forageables. After quite a long time of picking flowers, I got bored and checked out the community center, and it turned out that I could complete an entire bundle. The Junimos, in return for my forageables, gave me more forageables. Thanks guys. I then foraged for a little more before going to bed. In the morning of day 27, I woke up to a message saying that my copper pickaxe had completed its upgrade, so I quickly harvested my beans, said hello to my chickens, sold my beans, then headed out to Clint's. After receiving my pickaxe, I immediately ran down to the mines to try it out. I managed to get down to level 50 and got the tundra boots. I then wandered home and went to bed. Day 28 was the very last day of spring, so I didn't have to water my beans. When I looked over at my coop, all my chickens had fully grown and produced their very first eggs, which I excitedly grabbed. I then made 4 mayonnaise machines and put the eggs inside. Seeing as it was the last day of the season, I decided to chill out and fish for the rest of the day. Day 29 was the first day of summer, so when I headed outside, all of my precious beans were dead. I grieved for a while, then patted my chickens and headed down to Pierre's to get some summer seeds. I ended up buying lots of corn and wheat because corn lives through summer and autumn. I then went home and planted all the summer seeds I owned, wheat, corn and melons. After fertilizing and watering the ground, I spent the rest of day 29 looking for new summer forageables before going to bed. It was finally day 30% through these 100 days. I started out by watering all of my crops that I had planted the previous day, then headed straight down to the mines because I knew I needed more iron. By the end of the day, I managed to get all the way down to level 60, halfway to the bottom of the mines. I had a little scare when I realized it was midnight in the middle of a cave level and had to run all the way home, only making it by less than 20 minutes. Day 31 was a very special day. It was a special day because when I walked out of my house, I had some mail from Mayor Lewis asking for his special purple pants. Mayor Lewis will never, ever get his purple pants. Ever. Anyways, after I finished reading his letter, I watered all of my crops and grabbed all of my eggs before realizing that I hadn't visited the beach for a while. When I arrived there, I noticed a broken down bridge that said 300 wood would fix it. So I hurried home, realized I didn't have enough wood, and chopped trees for the rest of the day. While I'm recording this voiceover, I just realized that I'd completely skipped day 32. So, day 32 doesn't exist. On day 33, I woke up and decided that every day on this day forwards, I would go to the mines and grind until I got to levels that would give me gold, because I needed gold to make quality sprinklers. So after watering my plants and collecting my eggs, I headed back down to the mine. I didn't get anything amazing, but I managed to reach level 65 before heading home to bed. On day 34, I woke up with a mission to reach the bottom of the mine, so I could finally cross off one of the items on my list for these 100 days. This was a 10-day endeavor, so I wrote down some of my limestones. On day 38, I got enough gold from the mines to make some sprinklers, so I didn't have to waste so much energy watering every morning. On day 42, I reached level 110. On day 43, I'd finally done it. I reached the end of the mines and collected the skull key. I spent all of day 44 celebrating my success and selling all of the crops that had grown in the time that I was mine grinding. On day 44, I woke up and looked at all of my riches and decided that it was time to spend 10 grand on upgrading my coop to unlock ducks. But before I could purchase it, I quickly harvested my melons, then headed down to Robin's. But I had made a horrible mistake. I didn't have enough wood, so I went home, realized I didn't have nearly enough wood, and chopped trees for the rest of the day before going to bed. In the morning of day 46, I knew exactly what to do. Everything was perfectly planned. I watered my extra crops, made some mayonnaise, and headed to Robin, so I could definitely get my coop upgraded. When I arrived, I rechecked. I had everything. All I had to do now was order it. So Robin wasn't there, so I spent the rest of the day fishing and sulking. Day 47 was finally the day I could upgrade my coop, so as soon as I finished my chores I went up to Robin's and ordered my coop upgrade. I then spent the rest of the day donating all of the artifacts that I had found during my mine grind, then making a delivery to the wizard before going to bed. On day 48 I woke up to some mail from Demetrius asking for a melon. So after patting my chickens and making some mayo, I headed out with a melon to find Demetrius. After giving it to him, I got an achievement saying that I had made a friend. I have one friend. I then went down to Clint's to upgrade my axe, then went to bed. Day 49, I decided to spend the day bonding with the townsfolk after realizing that I only had one friend the day before. I gave presents to as many people as I could throughout the day, and then wandered home to plant some seeds and go to bed. It was officially day 50% through these 100 days. To celebrate, I decided to make the day even more special and start Operation Get the Mayor's Pants. But to get them, I would need to befriend Marnie as the pants were in her bedroom. So I grabbed one of my only diamonds and set out to find and give Marnie the present. 1 heart, 2 to go. On day 51, I decided that I wanted to get a fish tank for my house, so after quickly handing out some gifts, I headed down to Willie's to buy a fish tank. I also needed some fish to go in it, so I spent the rest of the night fishing before going to bed. In the morning of day 52, I noticed how many geos I had stocked up, so I decided that I would spend the morning at Clint's, opening them all. After Clint had finished, I donated all of the artifacts to Gunter, and he gave me a stuffed bear in return. I then remembered that there was a pool of lava on floor 100 of the mine, so I headed up to the mines and fished there for a while. All I got was rubbish. I then fished a bit on floor 60 and I still got rubbish, other than one ghost fish. I went home that night very disappointed. On day 53, after I patted my chickens and grabbed some eggs, I made my way up to Clint's to upgrade my hoe. After I'd paid, I also wanted to buy some ducks for my new coop, but unsurprisingly, Marnie wasn't at her counter, so I couldn't get my ducks. After that, I wandered down to the beach to catch some trash for the rest of the day. In the morning of day 54, I realized that I was yet to fish at all in the river flowing through the town, so after I tended to my animals, I wandered down to the river. I caught prominently shad, pike, brim, and green algae. A lot of green algae. The green algae also somehow ate my bait every time I cast, but that's no problem. After fishing until dark, I quickly donated some of my fish to the community centre before heading home to bed. What I did in the morning of day 55 was go down to Marnie's first thing in the morning to buy my ducks. I bought 4 and named them Gorngok, Froon, Stonky, and Clom. After that, I went over to Clint's to pick up my new hoe. Then, since I had nothing else to do, I said hello to all my new ducks, then went to bed. Day 56 was the last day of summer, so I decided to just chill out with the townsfolk. After gathering lots of gifts, I headed out to the town. After giving them all away, I just chilled with the moonlight jellies before going to bed. Day 57 was the first day of fall. When I went outside, I was surprised that all my corn was still alive, and then I remembered that they lived through summer and fall. After patting my chickens and ducks, I headed out to Pierre's, planning to spend some money on seeds. I ended up spending all of my money on seeds. I used the rest of the day planting, fertilizing, and watering all of my crops. On day 58, after I patted my chickens and admired my crops for a bit, I headed into town when I was hit by a cutscene regarding the new special orders board. It had just been built, but somehow Linus had already put a notice up there about fishing for trash. So I accepted it, and after I made a quick delivery to Pam, I got to work fishing. And by around 7 o'clock I finished fishing up all the trash and headed up to the train station where I dumped the trash and went to bed. On day 59, I started out the day by saying hello to all of my animals. I then made my way into town and completed a delivery to Linus. With nothing else to do that day, I planted some trees for future tapping and went to bed. It was officially day 60, 60% through these 100 days, and the day my ducks were fully grown. And when I headed out to my coop, there were both chicken and duck eggs in there. I decided to make duck mayonnaise that day. I then spent the rest of the day fishing with Willy before going to bed. What I did in the morning of day 61 was pet my chickens, ducks and Knob before heading into town to sell some corn. After checking the calendar, I realized that it was Elliot's birthday, so I went down to the beach and gave him a duck feather. Surprisingly, he loved it. I then spent the rest of the day fishing before going to bed. On day 62, after I completed the normal chores, I decided to go fishing again, and after another full day of fishing, I realized how important getting to level 10 fishing would be, and how much money fishing was getting me anyways, so that night I went to bed scheming a plan. In the morning of day 63, I woke up with the plan of the legendary fishing grind fresh in my mind. This grind would take place from day 63 to whenever I could reach level 10 fishing. Then I could sell all of my fish, making a huge profit. I got to work fishing, and so the fishing grind started. And finally, after catching the legendary fish angler on day 70, on day 71 I reached level 10 in fishing and chose angler. The fishing grind was over. Day 72 was the Stardew Valley Fair, which I had been preparing for over my fishing grind. After putting away everything I had grown and caught over the grind, I grabbed my items for the fair and headed into town. I set up my display, and after inspection by Mayor Lewis, I came first and won 1,000 star points, which I bet until I could buy everything in the store. After selling them out, I went home and went to bed. That night I made nearly $75,000 off my fish and produce. On day 73, after picking my pumpkins, I headed out to the town to sell my produce. Pierre's was closed, so instead I wandered down to Clint's to pick up my new steel axe. I then spent the rest of the day chopping trees at my farm, then clearing out the secret woods before going to bed. On day 74, I had a plan. First, I did my chores at my farm before heading out to the town to sell my produce to Pierre. I then wandered up to Robin's and bought another silo before heading back into town to give Marnie a cake for her birthday. I then spent the rest of the day in the mines hunting for iron before going to bed. Day 75 was a very special day. It was a special day because it was the day Mission Pants would finally end. So after doing my chores at the farm, I headed down to Marnie's. I had spent all this time and all these gifts to build up to this moment. I was ready. After securing the pants, I ran home and went to bed. On day 76, I decided that it was time to check out the community center again, to check what I could donate. After roaming around it for a while, I composed a list of items that I could donate on a piece of paper. I then came back a couple of hours later with everything I could possibly donate, and I managed to complete the furnace room thing, unlocking the minecart. I went home to bed that night, very proud of myself. I wasn't actually recording for day 77, but I can say that it was a great day. On day 78, I decided to check the big stuff board and saw Robin asking for me to collect 1,000 wood in 1 week. So I spent the entire day chopping wood. I ended up getting 500 in 1 day. I spent all of day 79 completing Robin's resource rush before going up to her house to buy a house upgrade, but she wasn't there, so instead I spent some time fishing before going to bed. On day 80, I realized that instead of getting my house upgrade, I should get a barn so I could get even more money even faster. So after doing all of my farm chores, I headed up to Robin's to buy my barn. After ordering it, I spent the rest of the day in the mines looking for iron before going to bed. In the morning of day 81, I thought back to the fishing grind and realized the only person I ever spoke to during that time was Willie, so I decided to dedicate day 81 to talking and giving presents to the townsfolk. After gathering up some presents, I headed into town, gave them all away, then went home to bed. I spent day 82 mostly collecting hardwood from both the farm and the secret woods. I then decided to use up all of the leftover eggs that I had been keeping and make them into mayonnaise. While doing that, I also recycled a bunch of trash that I had been collecting while fishing before going to bed. Day 83 was Spirit's Eve, so after doing my chores I chopped trees until 10 PM, the time that the festival began. The first thing I did when I appeared at the festival was look in the shop, where I found absolutely nothing good. I then talked to some of the townsfolk before heading into the maze. After doing some exploring and talking, I eventually found my way to the Golden Pumpkin, then went to bed. It was finally the final day of fall on day 84. Seeing as all of my precious grass would die the next day, I spent the entire day grabbing hay from my silos and putting it in a chest, then going around cutting all of my grass. Eventually, I ran out of grass on my farm, but ended up making almost 550 extra hay for the future. I then went to bed in anticipation of the incoming winter. Day 85 was the first day of winter, so with no watering or chasing around animals to do, I had the whole day in my hands. I first went into the town to talk with some townsfolk before spending the rest of the day at the ocean catching the new winter fish. I then went to bed and made nearly $5,000 off fish and mayonnaise. In the morning of day 86, I got a letter from Willie asking if I could catch a squid, so after doing a tiny amount of grinding I needed to do back on the farm, I set out to fish. I fished all day because I didn't know where and at what time the squid would appear, but eventually at night in the ocean I caught the squid. After giving it to Willie, I headed home to bed. On day 87, I realized that I'd still not gotten some cows for my barn, so first thing in the morning I went down to Marnie's to buy some cows. I ended up naming them Epic Chunk, Stankster, Monkus, and Hippo Snut. Normal names. I also bought an auto grabber for only $25,000. What can I say, I'm pretty rich. I then went up to Robin's to buy a house upgrade on the same day. With barely a quarter of my money spent, I went home to bed. I was checking my collections tab in the morning of day 88 when I realized that I was only missing the third dwarfish scroll until I could donate them all. So after doing my chores, I headed up to the mines to do some searching. When I was down there, I got my first secret notes. When one of them gave me a journal quest to do, I noticed that the game had glitched and was still asking me to give Willie his squid, even if I have video evidence of me doing it. I didn't end up finding the scroll, so I went to bed. On day 89, I decided, since I had nothing else to do, that I would do some fishing in Sindsap Forest. After harvesting my fiber plants and feeding my animals, I bought 2 heaters from Money, set them down, and got fishing. Miraculously, halfway through my fishing endeavor, I caught my second legendary fish, the glacier fish, first try. Easy. I then went home with my victory and went to bed. I had a few things that I needed to do on day 90, so after finishing my chores I went up to the town to deliver Emily an amethyst. I then headed up to the saloon to deliver Gus 24 eggs before wandering down to the museum to deliver all of the artifacts that I had been saving up before going to bed. I just fished all day for day 91. I had nothing better to do. I also ended up completing Willie's squid quest for the second time before going to bed. Day 92 was the ice fishing festival, and also the day that my cows were fully grown, so after watching some television, I got to work making some mayonnaise and cheese before heading down to the festival. After talking to everyone, I started the ice fishing competition, which I won, and I got some tackle for first place. I then left and went to bed. On day 93, I woke up and wanted to make a shed, so after I did my chores, I headed up to Robin's with my resources. She wasn't there, so instead I went down into the town, into the community center, where I completed another bundle. I only needed one more item until I completed another room. I then went home and went to bed. In the morning of day 94, I did my farm chores, then went to buy a shed from Robin. After that, I gave Sebastian a present for his birthday before spending the rest of the day in the mines collecting iron, before going to bed. On day 95, I did my farm chores and headed into town with some wood to finally repair the bridge at the beach. On my way there, I stopped at the bulletin board and agreed to catch 10 perch for Demetrius, before heading down and fixing the bridge. After doing some foraging, I went down to the mountain lake and fished there for perch until going to bed. In the morning of day 96, I woke up to a letter from the wizard asking for a dark essence, so I quickly did my farm work and set out to deliver it. After giving it to him and receiving 1,000 gold in return, I spent the rest of the day catching perch for my quest. After successfully catching 10 of them, I went home and had an early night. On day 97, I quickly did my farm work before heading into Clint's to get my pickaxe upgraded. I then went down to the beach and across the bridge to fish in the new area that I had unlocked. After a while, I went up to the museum to donate some things before going to bed. In the morning of day 98, I noticed that my pine tar was ready, so I ran straight to the community center to finish a room. After the Junimos did a little dance, I went up to the mines to grind for the last dwarvish scroll before I realized that I didn't even have a pickaxe. So I had to rely on monsters to drop exits. After another unsuccessful run at the scroll, I gave up and went to bed. On day 99, seeing as the bridge to the quarry was now fixed, I quickly did my farm work and headed out to the new area. When I arrived, I spent some time clearing out the area until the night market started. When it did, I wandered down to the beach, and when I found nothing I wanted to purchase, I headed home to bed. It was officially day 100. 100 days of Stardew Valley. Seeing as it would be my last day in the valley for quite a long time, I decided to give back to the community and spend the day giving gifts and talking with the townsfolk. After talking and giving for a while, I went home and went to bed. Thank you all so much for watching these 100 days. I will be streaming on this Stardew world on my Twitch soon, which will be the top link in the description. Thank you so much for watching.